Okay, welcome to the African History Network show. It is Sunday, September 4th, 2022, and we are live. Normally on Sundays, we broadcast on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF, but because of the Labor Day weekend, the radio station is shut down. But I said I was going to broadcast anyway because I already had some content prepared. So I said I'm broadcasting anyway. Okay, so share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. Hopefully the audio is good. Okay, so this past week was a very busy week. We saw that on Thursday, President Joe Biden delivered a blistering speech attacking MAGA Republicans. Biden attacks Trump and MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy in blistering speech. We're going to share an excerpt of that speech with you as well. And then, so that was on Thursday. And then also civil leaders of major civil rights organizations met with President Joe Biden on Friday. And they are civil rights leaders warned of threat from white supremacy. They've called a state of emergency as well. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers white supremacy poses to the U.S. following a meeting with President Joe Biden. Now, this was a meeting that was already scheduled to take place. It just so happened that it took place right after the day after President Joe Biden gives this blistering speech, calling out the MAGA Republicans, calling out the election deniers, calling out the coup plotters, etc. And rightfully so. So many people are applauding the speech. You have some people running around like a hit dog hollering, complaining about Joe Biden's speech. Civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. We're going to share an excerpt of that press conference that they held right after a meeting with President Joe Biden on Friday. That was Friday, September 2nd. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers white supremacy poses the U.S. following a meeting with President Joe Biden. And this was an article originally from Bloomberg. White supremacy activity is danger to our democracy. Derek Johnson said, president of the NAACP, CEO and president of the NAACP. He said at the White House, after the meeting at the White House on Friday, he says, so as we stand here as civil rights leaders, we are aligned with this administration to protect democracy. So we'll discuss this as well. And then also we'll update on what's going on in Mississippi with the water crisis in Mississippi. Now, FEMA is down there. President Joe Biden declared the state of emergency for Mississippi as well. So Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi specifically, they're getting federal help now also. So they're making some progress. Things are not where they should be, but they are making some progress. There was a press conference that Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba held on Wednesday. So we'll share an excerpt of that. There was a press conference he held on Wednesday. We'll share an excerpt of that press conference also. And Wednesday, I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay, Wednesday, August 31st. Normally I'm on Friday, but we didn't have a show Friday because of the Labor Day weekend. And they called me and asked me if I could come on Wednesday. So we discussed this on Wednesday also. So we'll give you an update there, what's happening with the Mississippi water crisis and Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. And, you know, I talked about this last Sunday, and we dealt with the Mississippi felony disenfranchisement law. And we dealt with the racism going on in Mississippi and the history of the racism in Mississippi. And this is much deeper than many people thought. This deals with about 30 years of neglect when it comes to Mississippi, about 30 years of neglect. coming from the state legislature, coming from the governor of Mississippi also. But another thing that I posted this article here that came out in the past couple of days. And this deals with Mississippi and student loan forgiveness. Mississippi and student loan forgiveness, okay? And this is a shocking story. So after President Joe Biden made this announcement on August 24th of student loan forgiveness of $10,000 to $20,000, and for 20 million borrowers is going to wipe out the remainder of their student loan balance. This article here from this Mississippi publication, WLOX, August 31st, Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. Mississippi confirms it will tax forgiven student loan debt. Mississippi confirms it will tax forgiven student loan debt. This is channel 13, WLOX in Mississippi. We'll talk about this as well. And there's some other articles we'll discuss as well dealing with Mississippi, because Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country, and the American Rescue Plan waived the American Rescue Plan made the student loan forgiveness tax exempt. Okay, but the state of Mississippi is still going to tax these people for having their student loans forgiven. Okay, it's just backwards. All right, so we'll discuss that, and then also in another Mississippi story, you may have heard about this, and I posted some information on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, dealing with this as well. So Governor Tate Reeves is the Republican governor of Mississippi. In August, he sent back $100 million in rental assistance that came from the federal government to help poor people stay in their homes in Mississippi. You know, so the American Rescue Plan had $46.5 billion of rental assistance, of funding for rental assistance, and for landlords to be able to pay the banks, so the landlords could stay current on the mortgages on their property, and also renters could get federal funding to pay their rent and stay in their homes. Governor Tate Reeves, the Republican governor of Mississippi, just sent back $100 million in unused rental assistance. And he called it a socialist experimental program. Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country. And this fool sent back $100 million in funding to help poor people and people who need it stay in their homes. This is why elections have consequences. This is why people like Governor Tate Reeves, the Republicans in the state legislature of Mississippi, this is an example of why they have to be voted out of office. Having stupid people in office can be deadly. Having stupid people in office could be deadly. Okay, so we'll discuss that. We'll talk about the civil rights leaders declaring the state of emergency as well, in the meeting they had with President Joe Biden on Friday. And no, this is not their first meeting with President Joe Biden. This is, I think, the third. They've already met with him while he's been president. This is not their first meeting. Okay, somebody on Roland's Facebook page said, "Oh, this was their first meeting." It's like, you don't even follow politics, man. You should do a Google search or something before you start speaking. So we'll discuss that. And then also, I posted about this as well on our Facebook page. So we know Republicans are upset about President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness, and the fact that a little more than 1 in 4 African Americans are going to have their loans forgiven. you're going to have about 50% of African Americans will have half their debt wiped out. And then also 500,000 African American families will go from a negative net worth to a positive net worth. Well, I don't know if you saw this story, but you have Republicans who are getting ready to file a lawsuit to block President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program. GOP attorneys general, state attorney generals, top lawmakers, and conservative groups are discussing legal options, alleging the White House's move to cancel student debt is illegal. Now, Republicans basically aren't doing anything to cancel student debt, to help borrowers, anything like that. Republican state attorneys general and other leading conservatives are exploring a slew of potential lawsuits targeting President Joe Biden's plan to cancel some student debt, challenges that could limit or invalidate the policy before it takes full effect. And you have people running around talking about not voting. Just stupid. This is pure evil. This is pure evil right here. Okay. All right. So we'll discuss that. Also, we have a new online class starting up on Thursday, September 8th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is going to be an 8-week online class. We have some new content in the class also, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. So this class, we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime, even after a year or two after the class is over with. You can still go back and watch it. This will be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Class number 1 starts Thursday, September 8th. Class is on sale $80, regularly $130. So you can register for it right now. As soon as you register, there's bonus content. You can start watching. And we also have a bundle pack where you register for both classes for $130. That's an over $300 value. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, you get a 50% discount. So email us, you get a 50% discount. Okay. And then the second class is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. That class is going to start up Tuesday, September 13th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. So we'll deal with that and those other topics also. And we give you an overview. We'll give you a preview of my new online course also. All right. Now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our new website, TheAFricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAFricanHistoryNetwork.com as well. Okay, let's jump into this first story here. And I mean, there's been so much talk about it, so many articles about it, so many news stories about it, dealing with President Joe Biden calling out the MAGA Republicans. President Joe Biden calling out the MAGA Republicans. So there's a good piece from the Washington Post that I read. Also, a good article from NBC News. Okay, if we go to let's go to the piece from NBC News first. Let me pull this up here. Biden attacks Trump, MAGA Republicans as threat to democracy in blistering speech. And yes, they are a threat to democracy. He's not talking about regular mainstream Republicans. He's talking about the coup plotters. He's talking about the election deniers, the people pushing conspiracy theories. All that stuff is very dangerous. Okay, that's what he's talking about. Okay, so if we look at this article here from NBC News, then we're going to go to some of the actual footage. We'll go to some of the actual, some of Biden's actual speech. Okay, Biden attacks Trump, MAGA Republicans as threat to democracy and blistering speech. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. Biden said in remarks in Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia, we know, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was the U.S. capital before Washington, D.C. Became the capital. So it was very symbolic that he held his speech there in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, now President Joe Biden accused former President Donald Trump and his supporters, or some of his supporters, of promoting an extreme ideology that threatens democracy in a rare primetime speech, in rare primetime remarks Thursday, as he stepped up attacks on conservatives ahead of the midterm elections. Well, these were some conservatives. He talked about working with Republicans, but he's talking about these extreme MAGA Republicans promoting conspiracy theories, pushing violence, inciting violence. Quote, too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Biden said in the speech from the Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia. He said, let me scroll down this. He said he accused so-called MAGA Republicans, a reference to Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. He accused them of refusing to recognize free and fair elections, increasingly talking about violence in response to actions they don't like, and of being determined to thwart the will of the people, and in being determined to thwart the will of the people. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live in the light of truth, but in the shadow. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. Now, ahead of the remarks, senior administration official insisted that it was not a speech about a particular politician or even a particular political party. Biden said he did not believe the ideology he was referring to represented that of most Republicans, although it has been embraced by a number of elected officials. Biden said not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know because I have been able to work with these mainstream Republicans, Biden said. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. Okay. And he's absolutely correct. Now, I've seen one poll that shows it's about between 25 to 29% of Republicans that are not MAGA Republicans that don't follow Donald Trump like that, and Biden is trying to appeal to that 25 to 29%. Okay, and I think he can, and especially when you compare the policies of Republicans against those of Democrats and what Democrats have been able to accomplish. You have some Republicans who don't want Biden, who don't want Trump, who are not espousing the conspiracy theories, things like this. They're like, they operate based upon reality. But that's not the majority of the Republican Party. Okay, that's not the majority of the Republican Party. The majority of the Republican Party has been co-opted and poisoned by Trump. All right, I want to go to the press conference that took the speech that Biden gave. Let's go to this speech here.
My fellow Americans, please, if you have a seat, take it. I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is where America made its declaration of independence to the world more than 2 centuries ago with an idea unique among nations, that in America, we're all created equal. This is where the United States Constitution was written and debated. This is where we set in motion the most extraordinary experiment of self-government the world has ever known. With 3 simple words: we the people, we the people. These 2 documents and the ideas they embody, equality and democracy, are the rock upon which this nation is built. They're how we became the greatest nation on earth. They're why, for more than 2 centuries, America has been a beacon to the world. But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. So tonight, I've come to this place where it all began to speak as plainly as I can to the nation about the threats we face, about the power we have in our own hands to meet these threats, and about the incredible future that lies in front of us if only we choose it. We must never forget, we the people are the true heirs of the American experiment that began more than 2 centuries ago. We the people have burning inside of each of us the flame of liberty that was lit here at Independence Hall. A flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights. That sacred flame still burns. Now in our time, as we build an America that is more prosperous, free, and just. That is the work of my presidency, a mission I believe in with my whole soul. But first, we must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans, are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. These are hard things. But I'm an American president, not a president of red America or blue America, but of all America. And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now as I speak in state after state to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country. They look at the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th, brutally attacking law enforcement, not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy, but they look at them as patriots. And they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections. They tried everything last time to nullify the votes of 81 million people. This time, they're determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people. That's why respected conservatives like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Imhotep has called Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy. There are far more Americans from every background and belief who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those that accept it. And folks, it's within our power, it's in our hands, yours and mine, to stop the assault on American democracy. I believe America is at an inflection point, one of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and of darkness. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. But together we can choose a different path. We can choose a better path forward to the future. A future of possibility, a future to build and dream and hope. And we're on that path moving ahead. I know this nation. I know you, the American people. I know your courage. I know your hearts. And I know our history. This is a nation that honors our Constitution. We do not reject it. This is a nation that believes in the rule of law. We do not repudiate it. This is a nation that respects free and fair elections. We honor the will of the people. We do not deny it. And this is a nation that rejects violence as a political tool. We do not encourage violence. We are still an America that believes in honesty and decency and respect for others. Patriotism, liberty, justice for all, hope, possibilities. We are still, at our core, a democracy. And yet, history tells us that blind loyalty to a single leader and a willingness to engage in political violence is fatal to democracy. For a long time, we told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it, each and every one of us. That's why tonight I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology. We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. We, the people, will not let anyone or anything tear us apart. Today, there are dangers around us we cannot allow to prevail. We hear, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool in this country. It's not. It can never be an acceptable tool. So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever. You saw law enforcement brutally attacked on January the 6th. We've seen election officials, poll workers, many of them volunteers of both parties, subject to intimidation and death threats. And can you believe it? FBI agents, just doing their job as directed, facing threats to their own lives from their own fellow citizens. On top of that, there are public figures today, yesterday, and the day before predicting and all but calling for mass violence and rioting in the streets. This is inflammatory. It's dangerous. It's against the rule of law. And we, the people, must say, this is not who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't be pro-insurrectionist and pro-American. They're incompatible. We can't allow violence to be normalized in this country. It's wrong. We each have to reject political violence with all the moral clarity and conviction this nation can muster. Now, we can't let the integrity of our elections be undermined, for that is a path to chaos. Look, I know politics can be fierce and mean and nasty in America. I get it. I believe in the give and take of politics, in disagreement and debate and dissent. We're a big, complicated country. But democracy endures only if we, the people, respect the guardrails of the republic. Only if we, the people, accept the results of free and fair elections. Only if we, the people, see politics not as total war, but mediation of our differences. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. And that's where the MAGA Republicans are today. They don't understand what every patriotic American knows. You can't love your country only when you win. It's fundamental. American democracy only works only if we choose to respect the rule of law and the institutions that were set up in this chamber behind me. Only if we respect our legitimate political differences. I will not stand by and watch. I will not the will of the American people be overturned by wild conspiracy theories and baseless evidence-free claims of fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost. I will not stand by and watch the most fundamental freedom in this country, the freedom to vote, and have your vote counted and be taken from you and the American people. Look, as your president, I will defend our democracy with every fiber of my being, and I'm asking every American to join me. Throughout our history, America has often made the greatest progress coming out of some of our darkest moments, like you're hearing in that bullhorn. I believe we can and must do that again, and we are. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power. But I see a different America. An America with an unlimited future. An America that's about to take off. I hope you see it as well. Just look around. I believe we could lift America from the depths of COVID. So we passed the largest economic recovery package since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And today, America's economy is faster, stronger than any other advanced nation in the world. We have more to go. I believe we could build a better America. So we passed the biggest infrastructure investment since President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And we've now embarked on a decade of rebuilding the nation's roads, bridges, highways, ports, water systems, high-speed internet, railroads. I believe we could make America safer. So we passed the most significant gun safety law since President Clinton. I believe we could go from being the highest cost of prescriptions in the world to making prescription drugs and health care more affordable. So we passed the most significant health care reform since President Obama signed the Affordable Care Act. And I believe we could create a clean energy future and save the planet. So we passed the most important climate initiative ever, ever, ever. The cynics and the critics tell us nothing can get done, but they're wrong. There is not a single thing America cannot do, not a single thing beyond our capacity if we do it together. It's never easy, but we're proving in America, no matter how long the road, progress does come. Look, I know the last few years have been tough, but today, COVID no longer controls our lives. More Americans are working than ever. Businesses are growing. Our schools are open. Millions of Americans have been lifted out of poverty. Millions of veterans once exposed to toxic burn pits will now get what they deserve for their families and their compensation. American manufacturers come alive across the heartland, and the future will be made in America. No matter what the white supremacists and the extremists say, I made a bet on you, the American people, and that bet is paying off, proving that from darkness, the darkness of Charlottesville, of COVID, of gun violence, of insurrection, we can see the light. Light is now visible. Light that will guide us forward, not only in words, but in actions. Actions for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, for America. Even in this moment, with all the challenges we face, I give you my word as a Biden, I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Not because of me, but because of who you are. We're going to end cancer as we know it. Mark my words. We're going to create millions of new jobs in a clean energy economy. We're going to think big. We're going to make the 21st century another American century because the world needs us to. That's where we need to focus our energy. Not in the past, not on divisive culture wars, not on the politics of grievance, but on a future we can build together. The MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail. They believe America is not like I believe about America. I believe America is big enough for all of us to succeed. And that is the nation we're building, a nation where no one is left behind. I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. I still believe that to be true. I believe the soul is the breath, the life, and the essence of who we are. The soul is what makes us, us. The soul of America is defined by the sacred proposition that all are created equal in the image of God, that all are entitled to be treated with decency, dignity, and respect, that all deserve justice and a shot at lives of prosperity and consequence, and that democracy must be defended, for democracy makes all these things possible. Folks, and it's up to us. Democracy begins and will be preserved in we, the people's habits of the heart, in our character, optimism that is tested yet endures, courage that digs deep when we need it, empathy that fuels democracy, the willingness to see each other not as enemies but as fellow Americans. Look, our democracy isn't perfect. It always has been. Notwithstanding those folks you hear on the other side there, they're entitled to be outrageous. This is a democracy. But history and common sense good manners is nothing they've ever suffered from. But history and common sense tell us that opportunity, liberty, and justice for all are most likely to come to pass in a democracy. We have never fully realized the aspirations of our founding, but every generation has opened those doors a little bit wider to include more people who have been excluded before. My fellow Americans, America is an idea, the most powerful idea in the history of the world, and it beats in the hearts of the people of this country. It beats in all our hearts. It unites America. It is the American creed, the idea that America guarantees that everyone be treated with dignity. It gives hate no safe harbor. It installs in everyone the belief that no matter where you start in life, there's nothing you can't achieve. That's who we are. That's what we stand for. That's what we believe. And that's precisely what we're doing. Opening doors, creating possibilities, focusing on the future. And we're only just beginning. Our task is to make our nation free and fair, just and strong, noble and whole. And this work is the work of democracy, the work of this generation. It is the work of our time, for all time. We can't afford to leave anyone on the sidelines. We need everyone to do their part. So speak up, speak out, get engaged, vote, vote, vote. And if we do our duty, in 20...
All right, I'm gonna pause it right there. You can watch the rest of that at whitehouse.gov. So Biden delivered a powerful speech. He called out the MAGA Republicans on Thursday. Now, he clarified his statements on Friday because you had many Democrats who applauded his speech and said it was about time. He called out the conspiracy theorists and the MAGA Republicans, things like this. You had some who said, okay, he needs to go farther. This is good. He needs to go farther. You had Republicans sounding like a hit dog hollering, and they were complaining and saying Biden was being divisive. Imagine that. They support the coup plotters and the conspiracy theorists and the election deniers. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel, whose last name is Romney, but Biden doesn't like Mitt Romney. She's Mitt Romney's niece, if I remember correctly. Biden doesn't like, Trump does not like Mitt Romney. So Trump pressured Ronna McDaniel to drop the Romney from her name. This is how much of a cancer Donald Trump is. Okay. Now, if we look here at, if we go to, I want to go to this clip here. This deals with Biden's clarification on what he said to make it perfectly clear to everybody, because he wasn't talking about all Republicans, even though Trump was in Pennsylvania in the past couple of days delivering a speech, and a campaign speech, and he gave the impression that Biden was talking about the 74 million people that voted for Trump. That's not what Biden was talking about. He's talking about the MAGA Republicans. All right, now I want to go to this clip here. This is from CNN. Biden clarifies what he meant by MAGA Republicans. Let's go to this clip.
And Monica, President Biden is facing some fallout for his fiery speech from Thursday night where he laid into Mr. Trump and some of his supporters. What's the president saying now?
That's right. The president told reporters Friday he wanted to be clear that he doesn't consider any supporter of the former president's a, quote, threat to the country, while still defending his overall message from the speech.
I do think anyone who calls for the use of violence fails to condemn violence when it's used, refuses to acknowledge when an election has been won, insists upon changing the way in which the rules count votes. That is a threat to democracy. Democracy.
The White House is responding to Republican critics of the address who called it divisive by arguing standing up for democracy, denouncing violence, and defending rights and freedom is not political. Peter and Kristen.
Campaign season certainly heating up. Monica Alba at the White House. Monica, thank you.
That's Biden clarifying what he said for those that want to try to twist his words. Okay. All right, Jerome, thanks for your contribution through Cash App. We appreciate that also. You can support us through PayPal or Cash App if you'd like to stop for information. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN show. We also have the information on the homepage of our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. We definitely need your support because it's a lot that I have to take care of this week. Financially speaking, it's a lot I have to take care of this week. So this is our official Cash App account, $ the HN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts, and we have the link here. You click on the link. Takes you to our barcode right here. You can scan it as well. All right. I want to go to very quickly. I want to go back to this article here from NBC News. Washington Post has a good article you can check out as well. But this is from NBC News. Then I want to go to the meeting that the civil rights leaders had with Biden on Friday. Okay. Because one of the leaders was interviewed by Alex Wagner on MSNBC, and I'm gonna share that interview with you. Okay, Biden attacks MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy in blistering speech. All right, now a NBC News poll. Let me scroll down to this here. An NBC News poll last month in August found that threats to democracy have overtaken the cost of living as the most important issue facing the country. That was a NBC News poll from August. Okay, and let's see here. Now, let's see. In a statement Thursday, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel Romney accused Biden and Democrats of pitting Americans against one another. Now, the official Republican position on the January 6, 2021 insurrection is that it was acceptable. I forgot how they phrased it, but it was acceptable political discourse. That's what they call storming the U.S. Capitol, assaulting over 140 police officers, storming the Capitol, trying to interrupt a constitutionally mandated bicameral session of Congress to certify electoral college results for a peaceful transference of power. They call that insurrection acceptable political discourse. Now, Biden likened the outlook of Republicans who have embraced the MAGA philosophy central to Trump's presidency to semi-fascism at a fundraiser for Democrats last week. Semi-fascism. I think that was when he was in Maryland. Okay. He was campaigning for Wes Moore, who's running for governor of Maryland. Okay. Now, in remarks this week, also in Pennsylvania, Biden accused Republicans of not being supportive of law enforcement and the rule of law for their attacks on the FBI after it searched Trump's Florida estate at Mar-a-Lago, and they were carrying out a lawful search warrant that a federal judge signed off on. Now, the question is, why does Trump have he had over 300 classified documents at Mar-a-Lago? Why did he have them? And the National Archives has been trying to get those documents for a year from him. Why does he have the classified documents in the first place? And even if they were declassified, they still don't belong to him. They belong to the National Archives. They're not his documents. So why were they at Mar-a-Lago in the first place? He still hasn't answered that question. Okay, so check out this article here from NBC News. Biden attacks Trump, MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy in blistering speech. And then also we have a good one from the Washington Post. Biden warns U.S. faces powerful threat from anti-democratic forces. Biden warns U.S. faces powerful threat from anti-democratic forces. Biden in primetime address says Trump and MAGA Republicans are mounting a dangerous attack on the country's values, and Americans must fight back. This is from September 1st, 2022, from the Washington Post. Now, this speech from Biden came after he met privately with a group of presidential historians in early August. Okay, now we've talked about this here on the show. This is why understanding history is so important. And Donald Trump does not understand history at all. Okay. This one right here, this article here, we've talked about this here. We talked about it last Sunday on the show. Historians privately warned Biden that America's democracy is teetering. When Biden met with historians last week at the White House, they compared the threat facing America to the pre-Civil War era and to pro-fascist movements before World War II. Now, Biden's speech was after he met with these presidential historians. Now, this article is from August 10th, 2022. Now, Biden has enough sense to meet with presidential historians. Okay, Trump didn't do that. Okay, he had the 1776 commission, but they put out some ahistorical nonsense on whitehouse.gov. They put out a report, and luckily Biden took that nonsense down and disbanded the 1776 commission. The 1776 commission was supposed to be the answer to the 1619 project and Nicole Hannah-Jones from the New York Times. That's what the 1776 commission was. Now, President Biden paused last week during one of the busiest stretches of his presidency for a nearly 2-hour private history lesson from a group of academics who raised alarms about the dire condition of democracy at home and abroad. The conversation during a ferocious lightning storm on August 4th, 2022, unfolded as sort of a Socratic dialogue between the commander-in-chief and a select group of scholars. Okay. Beschloss, John, I think is two of the presidential historians you see on MSNBC, Beschloss and also John Meacham. They were both here at this meeting. They painted the current moment as among the most perilous in modern history for democratic governance, according to multiple people familiar with the discussions who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe a private meeting. Comparisons were made to the years before the 1860 presidential election, when Abraham Lincoln warned that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and the lead up to the 1940 election, when President Roosevelt battled rising domestic sympathy for European fascism. President Roosevelt battled rising domestic sympathy for European fascism and resistance to the United States joining World War II. So this is 1940. This is during the Depression. Okay, the diversion was for Biden part of a regular effort to use outside experts in private White House meetings. The diversion was for Biden part of a regular effort to use outside experts in private White House meetings to help him work through his approach to multiple crises facing his presidency. Now, former President Bill Clinton spoke with Biden in May about how to navigate inflation in the midterm elections. A group of foreign policy experts, including former Republican advisors, came to the White House in January to brief Biden for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. These meetings have come as Biden faces the isolation that is endemic to presidency, a problem that some Democrats say has been worsened by the coronavirus pandemic, which restricted visitors through much of the first year of his presidency, and by the insular quality of Biden's inner circle, made up of staffers who have worked with him for decades. Okay, now, so read the rest of this article here. And it talks more about this meeting with presidential historians and the importance of the meeting and how it relates to what's going on right now. Okay, check out the rest of this piece here from NBC News. So the speech that Biden gave on Thursday, September 1st, was less than a month after he met with Biden met with these historians on August 4th. Okay, now let's look at. I want to go to this piece here from MSNBC, and I need to cue this clip up because on Friday, September 2nd, Biden met with leading civil rights leaders, okay, to talk about the rise of white supremacy, talk about different issues, especially pertaining to the African-American community as well. Bloomberg has this article picked up by Yahoo News. Civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. Civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. And they held a press conference outside of the White House after the meeting as well. Now, Roland Martin, on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and on his YouTube channel, Roland Martin and Facebook, Roland broadcasted the press conference. So you can watch it in its entirety there. I think it's about 20 minutes or so. I'm going to share an excerpt of it. I'm going to share an excerpt of it here because Damon Hewitt, executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law, was interviewed by Alex Wagner on MSNBC on Friday, September. He was on Friday, September 2nd. Okay, so we're going to go to that clip here in just a minute, and I'll let you hear some of the press conference. Okay, stand by. So if we look here quickly at this article, civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers white supremacy poses to the U.S. following a meeting with President Joe Biden. This is an article originally from Bloomberg.com. White supremacy activity is a danger to our democracy. White supremacy activity is a danger to our democracy, said Derek Johnson, president and CEO and president of the NAACP. He said this after the White House meeting on Friday. He says, so as we stand here as civil rights leaders, we are aligned with this administration to protect democracy. Now, the meeting came a day after Biden accused Donald Trump and Republicans' primetime speech of stoking political extremism that threatens democracy in the U.S. Participants said they discussed a number of issues with Biden, including criminal justice reform, voting rights, support for African-American farmers, and the administration's efforts to secure release of Brittany Griner, the WNBA player sentenced in Russia on drug charges. The Biden administration has said Brittany Griner is wrongfully detained. Quote, we are happy we had the meeting day after he made such a passionate speech about democracy, said Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network, adding that Black Americans have had a different experience of democracy than other Americans. Now, Reverend Al Sharpton said Biden was committed to prioritizing further action on voting rights if Democrats kept control of Congress in the November 2022 midterm elections. And Sharpton said leaders pushed Biden on doing more on criminal justice reform beyond his executive order on policing that he signed May 25th, 2020, after Republicans blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in the Senate, because the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed the House of Representatives in March of 2021 by a vote of 220 to 212, and all the Republicans voted against the bill. No Republicans supported the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Okay, so remember that when you vote. And then Senator Tim Scott blocked it in the Senate, the Black Tea Party Republican from South Carolina. We discussed that more may be necessary. We're shooting for the law. Biden signed an executive order in May 2022, May 25th, 2022, the second year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. This executive order directed federal law enforcement agencies to revise their policies on use of force to limit tactics like no-knock warrants, chokeholds, and carotid artery restraints. The measure offers grants as an incentive to state and local police departments to adopt similar policies. Now, participants at the meeting also included Melanie Campbell, President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and Mark Yao, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Biden last met in person with most of the civil rights leaders collectively in July of 2021. In that meeting, the leaders also pushed for criminal justice reform and voting rights legislation, but those ultimately stalled in Congress, casualties of Democrats' then majority. It was blocked by Republicans. No Republicans supported the bills. Even the two voting rights bills, the Freedom to Vote Act, which was Joe Manchin's bill, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. No Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for those bills. Well, the Freedom to Vote Act did not make it to the House. That originated in the Senate. None of the 50 Republicans voted for that in the Senate. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed the House of Representatives in August of 2021 by a vote of 219 to 211. No Republicans voted for that bill in the House of Representatives. And then in the Senate, no Republicans voted for that bill, including the 16 sitting Republicans, who in 2006 voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act. 16 sitting Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, from Iowa, Chuck Grassley, old ass Chuck Grassley, almost 100 years old, Chuck Grassley. me pull this up here. Let me show you this graphic. None of them voted for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, even though they talk about how great John Lewis was and they love John Lewis and all this stuff. Okay, they didn't vote to protect John Lewis's legacy, which is why when every last one of those traitorous Republicans are up for re-election, they need to be voted out of office. This right here, current Republican senators who voted to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act in 2006. You got Moscow Mitch McConnell. You got Chuck Grassley spreading conspiracy theories about the FBI. You've got Richard Shelby of Alabama, who, if I remember correctly, originally he was a Democrat, then he became a Republican, senator from Alabama. Susan Collins of Maine, who's always concerned and disturbed. Susan Collins of Maine. Richard Burr, North Carolina. John Inhofe, spineless Lindsey Graham. John Thune. John Cornyn of Texas. Marsha Blackburn, who looks like a poodle in some of her pictures when her hair is, not done. She looks like a poodle. Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. Roy Blunt of Missouri, if I remember correctly. John Boozman. Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. Shelley Moore Capito is the other Republicans, is the other senator from West Virginia. So we know Joe Manchin is the Democratic senator from West Virginia. The other senator from West Virginia is Shelley Moore Capito, who's a Republican. You have Jerry Moran, Roger Wicker of Mississippi, senator from Mississippi. Now, Roger Wicker voted for the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, and there's something like $449 million from the infrastructure bill that's going to Mississippi. Not Jackson, Mississippi, the capital, but it's going to Mississippi in general. There's about 170 infrastructure projects that have been identified in Mississippi. Okay, and this funding from the infrastructure bill is going towards those projects. Now, the other senator from Mississippi is the public hanging woman, Cindy Hyde Smith. She voted against the infrastructure bill, even though Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country and has failing infrastructure and is in desperate need of infrastructure funding, in desperate need of high-speed internet in rural areas. Senator Roger Wicker, even though he voted against the Voting Rights Act, both Voting Rights Acts in 2022, at least he voted for the infrastructure bill. Cindy Hyde Smith, the other senator from Mississippi, voted against the infrastructure bill. Just stupid. So there was 19 Republicans who voted for the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Okay. And then you have Senator Mike Crapo. So these are the 16 sitting Republicans in the Senate right now who in 2006 voted for the voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act and the protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But in 2022, they voted against the voting rights bills. So this is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay, now let's go back to this right here. So you had leaders of civil rights organizations who met with Biden on Friday, the day after he gave this speech. Now, Biden has credited Black voters with let me back up here. Okay, Biden last met with civil rights leaders in July 2021. In that meeting, the leaders also pushed for criminal justice reform and voting rights legislation, but both efforts ultimately stalled in Congress. Counselors of Democrats then majority, the 50-50 majority in the Senate. That's why you have to expand your majority in the House of Representatives and Democrats maintain control of the House and expand their majority in their slim majority in the Senate. Because then if you get to like 55 Democrats in the Senate, then you can nullify the votes of Manchin and Sinema, and you can do carve outs to the filibuster or change the filibuster rules altogether. Now, Biden has credited black voters with reviving his presidential primary campaign and sending him to the White House. 16.9 million African Americans voted for Biden in the general election, 9.7 million Latinos, 49 million white Americans. He has said that addressing systemic inequality is among his priorities for his presidency. Now, we know that on day one in January 20th, 2021, we know there were 10 executive orders that Biden signed, and Executive Order 13985 was one of those executive orders. Okay. I don't know how many people know this, but Executive Order 13985 was one of those executive orders, and it dealt with rooting out racial discrimination when it came to government policies. If we look at this article from April 14th, 2022, from thegrio.com, Biden-Harris administration unveils government-wide action plans on racial equality. This right here that I'm about to show you is the result of Executive Order 13985 that Biden signed on day one in office. Why more people are not talking about this, I really don't understand this. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. This is an article from thegrio.com. We were scheduled back in April when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, one of those times I was on. We were scheduled to talk about it, and I mentioned it for a minute. We didn't have enough time to discuss it, but I've talked about it here on this show because this is extremely important. Okay, let's go to what is this doing? Okay. Biden-Harris administration unveils government-wide action plans on racial equality. So this is, okay, they pull up the one from Yahoo News, originally from thegrio.com. And this is from April 14th, 2022. Biden-Harris administration unveiled on Thursday a massive government-wide action plan to advance racial equity across 90 federal agencies with more than 300 strategies and commitments laid out by government leaders. How many people heard about this? I talked about this in April when it happened. The announcements from the dozens of federal agencies are the start of fulfilling an executive order signed by President Joe Biden on his first day in office. He signed 10 executive orders his first day in office. You can read them at whitehouse.gov. Executive Order 13985 was one of those executive orders. That's what this is the result of. On his first day in office, to advance racial equity across the entire federal government, across 90 federal agencies. In the video announcing the Racial Equity Action Plan, President Biden acknowledged that the commitments laid out by his administration must not be seen as just a one-year project, but a generational commitment. Must not be seen as a one-year project, but a generational commitment. These plans are an important step forward, reflecting the Biden-Harris administration's work to make the promise of America real for every American, Biden said. Now, from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, each federal agency released its action plan to advance racial equity, to close the myriad gaps in services available to underserved communities. Susan Rice, director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, led the administration's racial equity apparatus to ensure that all U.S. departments adhere to Biden's order to evaluate their agencies and implement strategies to ensure that their services reach communities that have been historically underserved and underrepresented, including Black, Latino, LGBTQ, tribal, and rural populations. Okay, you can read the rest of this article here as well. And they have the information also at whitehouse.gov. That's under Executive Order 13985. All right, so check out the rest of this. Now, this came out April of 2022. How many people heard about this besides on my show? Because I talked about this when this came out. All right, now, I want to go to this right here. I want to go to MSNBC because they dealt with the meeting that Biden had with the civil rights leaders. They dealt with this on MSNBC. Let me see. Why is this doing this? Hold on. Okay. They dealt with this on MSNBC on Friday. Alex Wagner on Alex Wagner Show. Let's go to this clip here.
January 6th insurrection, will it be through police and state violence, or will it be through white supremacy, which drives a lot of what we're seeing? And so that alignment in speech last night, you can hear in this meeting today, there is alignment about protecting democracy. We know that Black Americans are among the hardest working, most patriotic people in this country. And we need a democracy that works for Black America and that works for all of America. We need a democracy that does not condone, allow, or facilitate attacks on its own people, whether that be through voter suppression, whether that be what we saw during the January 6th insurrection, whether that be through police state violence, or whether that be through white supremacy, which drives a lot of what we're seeing. It's what the president is there. What we need to do is political muscle in the civil rights community and also among elected officials to push this agenda forward.
That was civil rights attorney Damon Hewitt, who, along with leaders of 7 other Black-led civil rights organizations, declared a state of emergency for democracy earlier this week. These leaders met with President Biden today, his own stark warning last night about the growing threat from authoritarian and white supremacist forces in the Republican Party. Joining us now is Damon Hewitt, President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Mr. Hewitt, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So I want to get your thoughts on this sort of very careful needle the president was trying to thread in his remarks last night. He said repeatedly there is a difference between Republicans and MAGA Republicans. And then you look at polling on one of the sort of most basic things in our democracy, the right to vote, and what happened in the 2020 election. I think it's something like 70% of Republicans say they don't think Joe is a legitimate winner of the 2020 election. Do you think people of color see a difference between Republicans and MAGA Republicans?
Well, look, I think that people of color, we can make fine distinctions and see differences. We know who's for us and who's against us, number one. And that does not always stay within the ranks of a certain single party. It's really about who uses their leverage, their sweat equity, their capital towards the interests of Black America, and in this case, towards the interests of democracy. And so I think there's a pretty clear distinction about who does and who does not.
What did you think? Who do you think was the intended audience of the president's remarks last night? On one hand, you would think it's some of those middle-of-the-road Republicans, and yet the response almost uniformly from the Republican Party and from conservatives today has been one of unrelenting criticism. They say that President Biden has, in some ways, galvanized, I think, the right wing to organize against him. Where is the change supposed to happen? Go ahead.
Right, those are desperate pleas. I heard the president speaking to multiple audiences. He was speaking to his base to let them know that he understands and sees what's happening, and he's not willing just to play nice and sit by and allow it to happen. He was speaking to what's left of the movable middle to say, if you actually care about this country, then you should actually listen to what I have to say. You should follow the policy direction that I'm taking. And he was also speaking to people you may call the never Trumpers out there, I'm sure. There's a big question mark, obviously, as to whether those people will swing his way again. But I think he was also speaking to us in the civil rights and advocacy community, because we are in multiple fights on multiple fronts. And we need to see this president standing up and calling it like it is. And that's exactly what we saw in such an eloquent way last night.
And then you had some time with the president today, right? I mean, this is a meeting that is many ways following up on what the president talked about, but also it dovetails with the work that you guys are doing as a coalition. What was the meeting about, and what's the plan to save democracy? Because we all want to know.
Right. Well, this was a part of a series of meetings with the civil rights community that's been planned since this president and vice president took office. So it's not a surprise that we're meeting. We will be there again, and we'll talk about it again. But today, messages coalesced around a broad sense of what it takes to protect democracy and the very fact that democracy is under threat. At the Lawyers Committee, we talked a lot about the promises of democracy. It's about economic opportunity and the notion of not just having a living wage, but having a chance at prosperity. Just the simple fact of being able to cast a ballot, have that vote count, and have the winner of the election actually be seated. Concepts that should not be novel. And so we talked about today a broad notion of what democracy means, what it takes to protect it. And there are some areas of contest in terms of what the best pressure points should be and what the right policies should be. But overall, there was strong alignment that bringing to America, bringing to Black America, to Brown America, to America overall, a message about the importance of preserving democracy is of utmost importance right now.
Is any of that, the conversation is occurring, but in terms of an action plan, is there anything that can be executed before the midterms? Because I think a lot of people are terrified about what happens in November.
That's right. So legislative proposals did not move the John Lewis Voter Rights Advancement Act and the like, electoral, Counts Act reform, what have you. But the president did issue an executive order on voting, on elections. And that executive order, among other things, allows federal agencies or enlists federal agencies in the mission of getting voters registered. We need to see more uptake from federal agencies. My understanding is that as of late spring, early summer, only 2 federal agencies had signed up to make sure that all of their offices around the country were voter registration sites. We need to change that. We need to mobilize and do what's possible in terms of election monitoring. There are some severe limitations on DOJ now after the Shelby decision in 2013. But some state AGs are now empowered to do things of that sort. You saw favorable laws in Virginia, New York. Of course, those are not states in the Deep South, which are very concerned. But there are buttons that can be pushed. And also, we're mobilizing in civil society. At the Lawyers Committee, we convened the National Election Protection Coalition. Our election protection hotline, 866-OUR-VOTE, is operating every single day with expanded hours as we approach Election Day. So we have to move and shake in so many ways. There's no easy button, Alex. There's no one federal prescription at this point, especially without legislation. I will say this, however. President Biden expressed a significant openness and eagerness even today to try again on federal voting rights legislation that will protect the right to vote. Of course, that's not likely to happen in this Congress. Yeah. In fact, the election this fall, really a lot hangs in the balance in terms of those results. But he expressed an openness and an eagerness to make a renewed push.
A lot does hang in the balance, and that is an understatement. Damon Hewitt, the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Keep fighting the good fight, please, Mr. Hewitt. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay, so that was from Alex Wagner's show on MSNBC. Alex Wagner tonight. She spoke with Damon Hewitt, executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. That is the organization that Kristen Clark headed up before she became Assistant Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice. Okay, now, and that interview was from Friday, September 2nd, 2022. That's on MSNBC's website. Okay, now, Okay, so we got that. We did that. Hello, African History Network family. You've put it off for way too long. Now it's time to act for your family, your future, and the next generation. Get life insurance for that peace of mind and security for you and your loved ones. Build your financial foundations starting today. Your independent agent at Fortified Trust Life Brokers, with over a dozen strong A-rated life insurance companies to offer you the life protection you need when it comes to final expense, term life, whole life, mortgage protection, annuities, and more. They are currently licensed in Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Don't let a pre-existing health condition hinder you from getting life insurance. You can get the affordable coverage you need today. Life insurance is only the beginning. Email them at Fortified Trust Life for a free fact sheet explaining the 5 basic building blocks for a strong financial foundation. It's their gift to you to help you fortify your future. Email them at fortifytl828@yahoo.com or call them at 706-339-5096 and leave a message. Fortify your future today.
IDO Network International, in collaboration with STL Black Woman, DACA, and ACTA, present the Royal Pilgrimage to the Americas, August 24th through the 28th. The African kings and queens are coming to you for business, networking, and sharing of Pan-African ideals. The venue will be the illustrious En Garde Arts Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri. A royal cultural experience and exhibitions, trade and investment opportunities in Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. A Royal Pan-African Summit hosting keynote speakers, and a red carpet banquet. Come and witness an African royal coronation ceremony. Register at www.idonetwork.org to book your ticket to wine and dine with African royalty. Vendor opportunities available. Get face-to-face with the royals who own the land and resources for business. Contact DACA for deal room information at 602-730-4572.
The work that I do is larger than the fashion industry. It's larger than the art world. And I believe that I was born to bring newness into this world. I'm Kaima McIntyre. I'm 24 years old and I'm an artist. I create everything from paintings to jewelry design, metaphysical jewelry to be specific, and fashion design. The only reason why my prom dress went viral is because people needed it. Within a few days of going viral, Notori Naughton reached out to me and she's like, I saw your dress, can you make me a dress? I was equally as shocked to be asked by a celebrity to design their dress at the age of 17. That's just one person, and the list just continues to go on to Janet Jackson, to Tyra Banks. It really hits home. That means that the discussion is happening on the grounds in real time.
iRedify is a Black-owned digital platform that showcases Black and Brown cultures and people. The books on the platform are written by African American authors, Afro-Caribbean authors, African authors, and so much more. Kids 14 and under can read ebooks, listen to audiobooks, and complete learning activities. Kids can even write in the books digitally. Get unlimited access to everything on the platform for only $8.99 a month at iRedify.com. Sign up for your membership today.